Hello and welcome to the gallery. My name is Jon and tonight we're gonna have a little bit of fun with an airbrush. Now, full disclosure, I have used an airbrush before. I mainly use it for priming, base coating, a little bit of zenithal, stuff like that. Nothing too fancy, nothing too tricky, just simple stuff. But tonight we're gonna do something a little bit different. I'm gonna see how far I can take this model using only the airbrush. This is something completely new to me because, like I said, mainly be using it for simple stuff. But hopefully we will get some nice results and maybe add a little bit of regular brushwork on after that. And here we have the model. It's a Cannuckmera from Creature Caster that I was gifted a few months ago. It's a quite interesting model. It's a mixture of different Canadian animals in a chimeric monster. I started out with a Vallejo surface primer over the entire model, and I'm just going to paint on top of that. So we start with a little bit of focused zenithal highlights with a white paint, and we're just going here and there making decisions on what we want to be a light area, what we want to be a darker area, and hoping for the best, because this is not the normal zenithal highlights. We're getting volumes, we're finding our shadows, we're thinking about where we want the bright colors to be, where we want the darker colors to be, and then, of course, intuitively, we will change our minds often throughout the process, as I will figure out what's working, what's not working, while I am painting it. My original plan was to have the goose head and the wings white. That plan changed, as you will see soon enough. Next, we're going in with an intense ochre ink from scale 75. This is the first time I'm using these colors. I got them for Christmas and decided to try them out because it's a very bright and powerful color. Well, the entire set, the Inktense set, is quite bright and powerful, and I wanted to see how it will look on this. So with this paint, I'm trying to find the mid-tone of all the skin. And sort of get it, but not really. This is really mostly accidents waiting to happen while I'm painting this model, but it is what it is, and it is more of a training session for myself personally, and hopefully some people out there can see what I'm doing and learn not to do the same mistakes if they see some mistakes, or find something interesting that they can use. Next, we're putting some Cygor brown contrast paint into it, and contrast paints with airbrushes work a treat. And we're finding our shadows now. We're just brushing it where we want the fur a little bit darker, somewhere in the recesses of the fur, underneath the model, in the muscle tone, in the shadows, and we will be probably adding a little bit here and there throughout the entire model, a little bit of stripes, giving it a little bit of life, taking everything out of focus, because why not? And at that point I changed my mind about the goose. Now it's a brown goose, and also we're adding a little bit more to the actual moose part because that was a little bit too light. And again, changed my mind, went from the white wings because we changed the goose head into a brown goose. Let's change the wings as well, so they're getting a much darker brown color, which later on we will be adding a little bit more depth to with dry brushing or something like that. Now we're going for the weirdness. It has these little skull globules and disgusting bits all around it. So let's make that a little bit more disgusting. And doing this with an airbrush was really, really, really fun, because we're getting much smoother transitions from brown to green, which are quite different colors. So we're starting with a little bit of olive green from Vallejo, and we're just squirting that on everywhere we find some skulls or pustules or something like that, and that's everywhere around the model. After all this airbrushing, the model will look a little bit bland, to my opinion, mainly because it doesn't have any focus points. It's lovely mixtures of colors and they are great in between them, but it still looks a little bit weird. Now over all this olive green, we're putting in a little bit of medium yellow from Vallejo, just to get a little bit more brightness to the color of the green. It was a little bit too dark for my liking, so we need to get it a little bit brighter. So let's put in some highlights of yellow on the dark olive green, and immediately it pops a little bit and looks a lot nicer. And it will go a little bit overboard because my aim is not maybe the best, but hopefully we can fix that up a little bit. And as you can see, I'm not hitting everything of the green, just the top bits, because when we're using airbrush, think about where the light is coming from, where it will be brighter, and the airbrush is great for that. You can, of course, do everything that you do with an airbrush with a brush, but it takes a hell of a longer time, and it's much more complex. Now, after all the yellow bits are done, we're putting in a little bit of Inktense Lime from Scale 75, another one of those paints from the set I just got. And I love these colors. They are so vibrant and powerful, and they make everything a little bit more interesting. A little bit more, well, saturated. Well, still using the yellow though. We're not into the intense green yet, intense lime yet, because of course we have a beak of the goose and a little bit in the eyes as well. Now we're hitting it with the green, and look at that. That is a lovely color. I mean, this is as bright a green as I can possibly imagine putting on a model, and I think this will be great for some OSL, some necrotic lights, some power swords, something interesting, something demonic. I will probably be using this for a future chaos thing in Warhammer 40k, or a future undeady Nagash thing in Age of Sigmar. Something really, really ominous and dark. This green color is looking mighty fine. And then I will not be painting the base on this video because it's quite a rudimentary base, but since I have the airbrush out, I decided to put a blue quickly on the water of the base. At this point, I feel like I've reached the end of my skill level with the airbrush, or what I can do at this point in time. So we're gonna mix it up a little bit, add a little bit of dry brush, a little bit of regular brushwork on top, and see if it looks okay after that. Now that we've got all our bigger colored areas going, blocked it, if you will, now it's time to figure out a little bit more about the smaller minutiae of the model, the shadows in between the tufts of fur, in between all the feathers and everything like that, getting a little bit more depth to this wonderful, weird model. And since it's such a lot of natural textures on this model, being a natural animal, shades and contrast paints and dry brushing are a treat. Starting out with a little bit of Agrax Earthshade, going over all the fur, all the feathers, everything like that, and just getting those smaller shadows in between the tufts going. Next we're using Warp Lightning, and we're going over all the green bits we had earlier. This is a really potent green contrast paint, so it works well with the really interesting yellow paint we got with the airbrush. And if it goes a little bit overboard, you can just dab it away with your finger, or wet the brush a little bit and just thin it out. It's the good thing about contrast paints. They can be quite forgiving, as you can see. And you can, of course, use this on whatever natural thing you want, because I'm guessing not many of you are running around with this model in your backlog. Or if you do, definitely paint it. It's really, really awesome. Next, we're just going to use a quick dry brush. We're starting out with leather brown, getting the medium highlights going on all the feathers and all the fur and everything, just so it pops a little bit more. And after we finished off with the leather brown, we're gonna go over it again, but this time using Flayed One Flesh. Still using the leather brown and getting those lovely mid-tones going. And now we're entering the Flayed One Flesh, getting the top highlights of every bit,
we're focusing this more on the top, not on the bottom where we maybe put a little bit of the leather brown for a little bit of detail. Now we're looking at highlights with a dry brush, so don't have to focus too much on the bottom of the miniature, just on the raised bits at the top where the light would hit it, if you will. And of course we're putting a lot of this as well on all the horns, the antlers, and also we will be using this a little bit on the teeth and everything like that. But first let's put a little bit of moot green over, dry brush that over all the green bits. We're not using a lot of it because we had quite a lovely green looking thing to begin with, but we wanted a little bit more interesting. So a little bit of moot green, then a little bit of demonic yellow, just to get that a little bit going. And then we have the eyes. Again, I'm just using flayed one flesh. I'm not picking too many colors. So we're just brushing that here and there, getting something interesting going. We're putting a little bit of paint here on the tongue as well, and of course on the teeth and the eyes and the antlers, getting a little bit of highlights going. So we're starting out with the teeth, the tongue, the claws. For the teeth and the claws and the antlers, I'm using Vallejo Bone White. For the tongue, I'm using Slaanesh Grey. And then we'll throw some contrast paint on top of that, just to get the little bit of shadow going, and it'll look kind of enough, really. The antlers are quite tricky. There's a lot of them. They're every which way. For the eyes, I'm putting on a little bit of the demonic yellow as well, because we want that, well, demonic look, because goddamn, look at it. It needs a demonic look. And also it has this big eye there, so of course we're going to paint that a little bit more yellow as well. And of course the geese are, well, demon birds, so let's get that the demon look. And also highlight the beak again, because it got a little bit too dark with all the Agrax Earthshade earlier on. And then for the tongue, it's a little bit of Magus Purple, just to have a little bit of color to it, because of the Slaanesh Grey that was underneath. It looks a little bit sickly and disgusting, so that's just fun to have it kind of icky, fitting for the model, really. And then for the mouth, mouth and the horns and the claws, we're just gonna use Skeletal Horde contrast paint as well, because we're not doing anything fancy, we're just getting some decent look going for the model. And it'll look like that's old tongue and the old teeth and everything, so that's just perfectly fine. And for the antlers, what I usually do when I'm painting horns and antlers and bones and stuff like that, I like to have it darker at the base. I know that Games Workshop usually has it darker at the end. I don't know why. I like to have it a little bit darker at the base, so I will drag my brush to the base to get it a little bit darker there. Quick highlight on the teeth and the claws, and we are basically done with this model. Well, as much as I am going to do this time around. This was an exercise in airbrushing, and even though I fixed it up and added a little bit of regular dry brushing afterwards, I think it turned out quite alright. Now, this was my venture into doing something more with airbrushing than just putting on the base coats and the priming and stuff like that, and I kinda liked it. I mean, I will probably be using this a lot more as a tool in my arsenal in the future, and hopefully later down the line I can make an even more in-depth video about airbrushing once I feel confident enough to do so. Thank you very much for joining me here today. There are links in the description for all kinds of stuff, social media and various tidbits. You do with it what you will. Like, share and subscribe, and hit that little bell thing as well, and let the colors flow. But until next time, farewell.